All right, we got some fun news, multiple things of newsworthy notes coming out of OTAs, the first round of OTAs for the Detroit Lions, and we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it, and we're going to get into that. We're going to get into a player that Amon-Ra St. Brown thinks is going to have a huge year for the offense. Of course, we're going to talk about Frank Ragnow's replacement, what they've been doing, and then players that I didn't know could get better have shown huge strides of improvement in the spring. So all of this is really good news. I would honestly say kind of a triple dose of good news, and we're going to get into that. But before we talk about all that, it was funny as I was looking in things and I was like, what am I going to talk about today on the channel? One of the things I saw is that Delta, hello Delta, yeah, we're talking airplanes now. Delta is offering one-way tickets on flights to specific destinations for Detroit Lions away games. This is out of Grand Rapids on the west side. We're on the west side over here. Huge Lions fans, grew up on the west side. And I have a question. Any of you out there, would you rather go to a Lions home game at Ford Field, or are you considering more and more going to an away game and maybe taking advantage of these direct flights? The tickets are becoming so expensive for the Lions, it might actually be cheaper for some of the games. I think Chris is going to game 1 at Green Bay. Lions at Green Bay. So if he's going, I might have to find a way to go too. But anyways, with all that being said, would you prefer to go to an away game or a home game? Are you going to go to a game this year? Leave those comments down in the chat, and we'll talk about it. All right, first bit of the good news. Let's talk about what Amon-Ra St. Brown said. He singled out a guy specifically with OTAs. No, he did not participate in OTAs. He's recovering from a little bit of a knee issue that he had some stuff cleaned up in his knee. And he said a guy that I'm excited for is Sam LaPorta. I think a lot of us forget about Sam LaPorta. We don't forget about him, but now we just assume that after a breakout rookie year, that second year that wasn't quite as good where he slotted in as still probably the 5th, 6th best tight end in the NFL. Maybe that's the norm. Amon-Ra St. Brown says something different. He told reporters after the team's final OTA practice, not taking anything away from what he did last year. He's a baller, but I can tell this year he's making plays out there every day. He's going to have a big year. And St. Brown actually talked about how it was kind of fun to be able to sit on the sideline and watch all of his teammates play and see what they were doing. And this is one of the guys that he pointed out and said, okay, he is going to be a baller this year. He was in year 1 an integral part of our offense. And it's just interesting to see, and I'm very interested to see what John Morton does with this, because Dan Campbell came out and talked about what Morton's doing on the offense. And I think this is the next bit of the triple dose of good news. And it's right here. He said, we've tweaked a few things here and there. How he sees it. He's talking about Morton. How he wants things run. How he wants to isolate certain players. All right, this is what he was talking about with John Morton's vision for the offense. He said a lot of focal points were wide receiver Jameson Williams and running back Jahmyr Gibbs, tight end Sam LaPorta, among others, and then getting the offense in. I thought we did that. I thought we really honed in on their versatility and the things they can do. Okay, I want to talk to you about something that is simple football for a second. I had this really weird thing in my brain last year that the offense, even though it was still producing at a high level, I felt like it was actually regressing. All right, just hear me out here for a second. And I've talked about this before. Instead of doing the simple things, right? Maybe it's a screen pass. Maybe it's a draw or a trap play. Maybe it's a simple running play. Maybe it's a crossing route. All those things, like crossing routes, yes, those happened. All that kind of stuff. But instead of having a vast amount of plays that I felt like we were running, I felt like in key circumstances, in key situations, we just relied heavily on trick plays. And we relied heavily on Montgomery, Gibbs, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. I understand Jamison Williams became a 1,000-yard receiver last year, which was a big deal. But if you look at his target share, there were games where he barely was looked at. So when we went into a game, a lot of games we didn't come into with this overall game plan. It was like, all right, I think I know this is going to work, so let's do it, and let's hope it works. And if it doesn't work, we'll run a trick play. I'm not saying it didn't work. It did. I think this offense under John Morton is going to be more multiple. I think back to the New Orleans Saints offenses. All right, I understand Michael Thomas had a year or two that were just out of control, right? But outside of those years, how many times in fantasy football did you say to yourself, I'm avoiding all Saints wide receivers? Kind of like a lot of times you avoid Chiefs wide receivers now. Or you wanted to avoid Patriots wide receivers when Tom Brady was there because you didn't know where the ball was going. You knew Tom Brady was going to throw for 300 yards. You knew Drew Brees especially was going to throw for 300 yards, but you didn't know which receiver was going to get it. Michael Thomas was a big deal. So I still think St. Brown is going to be big. And then after that, it could be anybody at any time. It could be anybody at any time. But this is really interesting to me. Amon-Ra actually echoed and kind of went in and said something very similar to what Campbell said. All right? He said, I want to see if I can make it so you can see the whole thing. He said, I think those guys are playmakers, St. Brown said. In our offense, they're guys that we need, guys that we lean on. Watching them this spring has been a lot of fun, being able to sit back and watch them do their thing and get better. Everyone on this team is important, but guys like J-Mo and Jameer are getting better. They're still young, so there's still room for improvement, but it's awesome to see them grow. All right, there are two people now talking about how Jahmyr Gibbs has shown marked improvement. I'm sorry, how much more improvement can you get? Do we all remember the last month of the regular season that this guy took over the lead running back role when David Montgomery was hurt? Like, are you kidding me? This dude is unbelievable. And to hear that he just continues to get better, and my guess is it's probably from a route running standpoint. I am telling you, Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be unlocked as a route runner. He's going to be unlocked. And so when we see this, it's going to be really, really exciting to see it. All right, next bit of news. I said triple dose. It's actually more like a quadruple dose, if I'm being completely honest, because now we are going to talk about the offensive line. When they said, Dan Campbell said experience is big. It is. But he also went on to say, but I think it's this is Dan Campbell being unable not to tell the truth. And this is hilarious to me. It truly is. Here's what he said. Experience is big, it is, said Campbell, of the new look offensive line. But I think it's whether it's there or it's the guy next to you. What he's saying is if the experience is at center or it could be the guy next to him. That can help out a lot too. You're going to need some experience somewhere in there. As long as you have that, you're okay. Okay. Graham Glasgow, Penei Sewell, Taylor Decker. None of them were playing at OTAs. All of them sat out. So it looked like from left to right, it looked like Giovanni Manu, and then it was Christian Mahogany at left guard, and then at center, it was Tate Ratledge, almost exclusively with the first team. And then you were sitting there with Coyote Iwasika, and then at right tackle, it was Dan Skipper. So you figure for sure Decker and Penei Sewell are going to be at the tackles. And then that right guard spot is a battle between Graham Glasgow and maybe Coyote Iwasika because both of them have experience. But you would imagine that it would be Glasgow. All right, so maybe in the beginning of the year it's Glasgow, and then if somebody is able to take that job away from him, then it's theirs to take. Maybe it's Frazier. Maybe it's as the other guys are growing in experience. Maybe it's Iwasika. I don't know. But what I do know, I hope it's not Iwasika, to be completely honest, just because we kind of know what that is, unless he's taking a big step, but I'm not hearing any news about how he's taking a huge leap forward or a huge step forward. He's just kind of there. You know what I feel like Coyote is just one of those guys who he's not awful, but he also, when he's gotten the opportunity to start, It's not like he's been great either, right? I'm thinking of the Evan Browns of the world. I'm thinking of when Graham Glasgow comes in to play center for Frank. I'm thinking of what Christian Mahogany did last year when he was able to come in as a backup and play exceptional. Coyote hasn't done that. He might do it for a quarter, but he hasn't done it for longer than that. So it's still good. I think what I hear Dan Campbell saying in that is you have a guy like Tate, and he can come in and he can play center, and he might not have that experience that that Frank Ragnow had, or doesn't have the experience that Graham Glasgow would have playing center, but he is the best center. And then you can put Graham next to him, and he can be barking stuff out. And you already know Goff knows a ton of stuff too. So you're going to be able to see these guys. But Tate Ratledge is similar as far as his athletic profile goes to what Frank Ragnow was. Extremely similar, actually. So you might be able to get the athleticism and the junkyard dog mentality of Frank in the center position, and then you can get his knowledge with Graham. So there is ways that you can get this done. That might not be quite as bad as I think a lot of people were thinking. So that's my triple dose of good news, right? Is that there's thinking that Sam LaPorta is going to have a bigger season, get him as your tight end, fantasy football. Then you can sit here and you can talk about somehow Jahmyr Gibbs and J-Mo are actually being targeted more. Now, is some of that because St. Brown isn't practicing? Yeah, some of it is. So what? Great opportunities. You know what you have in St. Brown. He keeps getting better, but his is more marginal. I think J-Mo still has another big step that he could take with his route running. I think Gibbs has another big step that he could take when it comes to pass, whether it's pass protection or actually going out and running different routes and things like that. So with all that, the Lions are sitting here in a really good position. And then the third bit of it, of course, was I don't know why, but I'm not worried about the center position. I'm a little worried about one of the guard positions. So for me, here's what it says to me. The drop-off is at center is going to happen, but I think Tate is going to be able to play it well pretty quickly, like halfway through year 1 into year 2. The drop-off for me now is going to be what's the difference between what would have been Tate at guard, Ratledge, and now Graham. That's my biggest concern, but I think the drop-off there is not as severe. So anyways, maybe I'm taking crazy pills. Who knows? Hey, what away game are you going to? What flight you booking on Delta if you're on the west side? Hey, thank you all for watching. So thankful. We'll see you on the next one.